G'day, welcome back. Today it's a follow-up to an earlier video I did, the fun with endgame table bases, where I'd come across this position where it was a completely bonkers checkmate in 192 ply, or about 95 mate, the normal way of thinking about it. And this had come out of a simple analysis of king and two pawns versus king and pawn from table bases, and then that turned into a queen and pawn versus queen endgame, which, as I pointed out in the previous video, is a cursed win, because actually the stronger side can win, but because there is more than 50 moves, or I think it's about 103 ply of no pawn moves or captures, the position is theoretically a draw. And it was a really crazy position. I wanted to look at it just to see if we could make any sort of general conclusions or gain any understanding in how to handle those types of positions. Just very quickly, what I'm going to do here is just highlight something which I've come across. Now, normally I talk about the chess notes website, which has got a lot of great historical information, talks about puzzles and things, and also the Arvers website, the endgame. That is one I've got about Arvers, all about chess endgame studies, and it's a great website. And the other one I just point out today is there's this guy. He's made a couple of comments, so I just thought he's got a few ideas from him. Arpad Rusz, he has this ruszchessstudies.blogspot, hope you can see that. He has his own blog, and he does a lot of work. He's an international master of chess composition, and he's done lots of chess compositions. We'll have a quick look at them, all sorts of stuff, right? So he's, as I've done this, he's just done something on Lasker Reichholm, which I have not got around to doing, so I'll definitely have to look at that. That's study 199. You can see he's got a lot of material, a lot of interesting positions to look at, a lot of king pawn end games, a lot of end games as well. The reason I found it quite interesting is he's also written some software which is probably much better than my amateurish way of looking at it using Python, but Syzygy Endgame Explorer, which I have not looked at, but people made some comments down the bottom. It sounds like a pretty interesting thing for looking at endgame table bases. And then also he is on this. Now, normally when I go to this, I go to try and compose by timeline, and I've looked at all composers. You know, most of the composers I'm looking at are all composers, but if you are interested, you can go composers by alphabet, and we'll just go to R, and here he is here. Click on him, got the same picture, and then you can see he's done so many, all these puzzles, all of them, many puzzles. I'm sure they're way above my pay grade for starters, but they all look very interesting and complicated. He's got some end game ones and he's got some middle game ones. So yeah, just I thought that was some interesting website which I have come across. Okay, so enough of that. Now, what we're going to be looking at is good old queen and pawn versus queen end games, which I'm just going to say again what was yesterday on the Wikipedia page. John Nunn wrote 3 books based on the most important endgames in the 5-piece endgame database, but omitted this endgame because it proved too hard to understand. And I think that's kind of true. We'll try and get a few principles from it, but as I was saying, this is a really complicated endgame, and just sort of let's start having a look at it right now. I'll just go over a little bit of what I did. You can see that picture there. Now, that's actually been generated by my piece of software I think I did before quite a long time ago when I was looking at Scoutfish early on, where it actually took a PGN file and took the white king moves and plotted them out in the comment at the start of the game. Draw all these arrows. You can see draw, and then that's exactly what it looks like. So what it does is it goes through the PGN, works out all the king moves. We'll go over in a second. And then I thought, okay, well, actually that worked. It worked exactly like that. But obviously what I'm missing here is all the other king and queen moves, so we can get an understanding of what sort of dance of death is going on in the endgame. So let's have a quick look. Let me bring up the code. Okay, I'll just bring it over here. I'll just go through this quickly, just to give you some idea. I mean, my code's terrible, as usual. Do not write any Python code like this. You'll get sacked. Anyway, so idea is that basically this function game scan, it takes the game and it just makes a list of, I mean, obviously what we're plotting here is the 2 king, white, black king moves and the white and black queen moves. So we start off with empty lists, and then what you do is you look at the standard algebraic notation of the move, and if it's got a king or a queen at the start, that means it's a king and queen move, and then if it's a white to move, then we'll add it to the white list, and if it's black to move, we'll add black list. And then what we add to it is we go back to the UCI notation, which is the from square and to square, and add that to a list. So basically, you come back from this function with 4 lists, and with those 4 lists, you now add them to the comments. You just add them. Percent draw arrow, from square, 2 square, and the colours. So give them 4 different colours. That's as simple as that. And if you look at that PGN, you can see that's exactly what it looks like there. Run that. Now, so I've run that for the solution of this position. Now, actually, you go a few moves forward, which we looked at before, where it's basically you get this position. Okay, let's have a look at this now. So, the start of the game, there's every move at the end of the game. Now what actually happens is actually not every move, because there are a lot of duplicated moves, and I haven't done the counts on that number of arrows, but you get the sense of basically the white king. We'll go through it. Has to maneuver all the way over to the king side sometimes, then comes all the way back, and then goes all the king side again. That's kind of where it finishes its procedure. The black king is a bit more restricted. John Nunn came up with this idea that the way to draw this game, and this is a drawn position because it's a cursed win, but you have the king in front, or you have the king over in this corner, which kind of works out. So basically the king, you can't really see it here, but makes its way down and hides over there. But still, doesn't help if you sort of take the solution version of puzzles where 192 makes with more than 100 moves, no pawn moves. That's fine. And then you can then see that where the red is the black queen going crazy, check, stopping the pawn, popping the pawn from behind, checking from the side, and then green is the white queen, which tends to be more sort of also checking the black king over here, but also being a bit more closely associated with the white king, so that you can sort of block and counter check and so on. So that's kind of the sort of the whole layout of the whole thing. What so I've sort of done is that's the whole schematic, and we play through it and we get to this position, and what I then do is put a comment. You can see, can you see? Yeah, you can see the comment there on the actual move saying this is all the moves to the next zeroing of the position, which in this case means the pawn move. You can see that pawn move b6 is the last move of this sequence, and so what's going to happen is going to be 3 pawn moves effectively, right? b5, b6, b6, b7, and b7, b8, which is how can white manipulate the position to be able to play those moves? Because obviously black is constantly checking, and black is constantly either attacking the pawn or stopping the pawn from advancing. So white has to use certain techniques to allow the pawn to move forward, and that's kind of just want to try and get some ideas of is there any patterns or any ideas that you can probably use. As in this particular position, if you get it, you probably, if you win, it'll be because you're kind of lucky in inverted commas, and black doesn't play perfectly, but I mean, you wouldn't expect him to anyway. So actually, in that vein, let's just quickly look at what happens. Here is a Wang versus Li, 2019, and then we've actually transformed to this position with a pawn on the third rank. So it should be a draw, theoretically a draw. So let's just go on a few moves, holding the pawn. Pawn's going to advance. Pawn advances. So pressuring the pawn, stopping it from advancing. So white has to maneuver around a little bit. I'm not going to look at these too detailed, but I just want to sort of show this is still drawn at the moment. No problems at all. Threatening to advance the pawn. So now the pawn advances. Check. King's in the way. Pawn can't advance. King goes to the this corner here, which is basically what you're after. Still drawn, even though he's let the pawn go to the 6th rank. So now here, this allegedly is a mistake. The king should stay in the this bottom corner. Right now it's winning. Let's have a look. We're still going to take quite a few moves, but then now it's drawing again. So winning again, drawing again. So who knows why? I just want to show that actually the reason why I showed this game we'll see this technique again, where the king goes across to the H file, threatening counter checks, and that's a very good way of getting the pawn through. But about 3/4 of the time, the game is actually won by the stronger side, even though those positions are drawn. So you can see that you definitely play on if you're the stronger side here, even though they're theoretical draws, because the techniques and the strategies behind are obviously so complex. Okay, so here we are back at the starting position. So this is going to be the first phase of getting the pawn from the 5th rank to the 6th rank. And you can see that in this phase, the white king stays quite close to the pawn in the ABC files. The black queen is checking a little bit, and the black king tries to get as far away as possible, because I think counter checks are a big risk here. So let's have a look at these few moves. This one we might be able to understand. Check the king. King has to go in front of the pawn. Check. Check from the c6 square. Looks pretty powerful. Now the king can move forwards. The pawn's threatening to move forwards. We've got checks on the side. Got a check at the back. Check from the side. And actually, we've got this position which I've coded up already. Now all the checks are stopped by counter checks, whether black checks on the 7th rank or comes back to the diagonal. So pawn advances. Right, okay, now here's the next setup. And this, I believe, this is the troublesome one. This is the one which is more than 50 moves, more than 100 moves, whichever way you want to look at it. And you can see how many arrows are coded up. And you can have a look at the general gist of it. You can see that the white king has to actually march all the way across to the king side. And the black king just stays there. And the red arrows, there's the black queen checking, and the white queen will be checking, covering the pawn or helping it to advance. So let's have a look at this. See if we can develop any pattern. Check, check, check. Now what I thought was going on here, as the white king marches across, the white king marches all the way across to the king side eventually. And I believe it's basically, there are some threats which forces the black king back to the e file. I think that's the whole purpose of what's been going on there. The black king had to move out of the corner, and now somehow or other it's held, and we're going to get the same sort of pattern where, bear with me, same pattern, right? So I think this maneuvering of the white king to the king side forced the black king back to e file. Obviously there's a lot of technicalities and subtleties there, and then you've now got this position, same as before, mirror image, and we can push our pawn. And now they're on the 7th, then it's much easier. And let's just have a look. There's one more technique here which I found very interesting. Checking. So once again, we actually dive across with our king to the H file. Just highlighted that. So a lot of counter checks, a lot of checks will now be counter check against the black king. So have to be aware of that. Blocked. Okay, so now the queen's taken up station behind the pawn. Check. So this is a very good pattern now. So they're holding the pawn, threatening to promote the pawn, and the king is opposite the opposing king. So we've also got possibilities to go checking there, and we're also covering this diagonal there. Let's see how that evolves, because now there's only one check on b2. Now there's only one check on b1, and now there's no checks. Instead, we're covering the the different required diagonal squares, and we're covering that square. So this is an interesting sort of formation. One more move, and we've got a queen, and then eventually you can see the last phase. This black move here is checkmating on the g2 square. Right. Okay. So I think this just got under my skin a little bit when I saw it a couple of days ago, and I just said I've got to have a close look at it and try and understand it a little bit better. So maybe we learn a few maneuvers which are applicable to knight's pawn if you have it. And as I said, by and large, people win this position, even though theoretically it should be drawable. So it's kind of what I wanted to say today about this totally amazing position, and I thought just an opportunity to have a look at a bit of the code and refine a few of my programs a little bit more, because I think the pattern's really There's a certain beauty to it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that sort of unusual video. Thank you very much for watching.